You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
My impression is that the president and the White House did an excellent job nationalizing the campaign. And I think you've got to give them credit politically for having done that very effectively.
We have the commentary of a President Obama on this election. At this point, he's not President Obama, though. He's just State Senator Obama from Illinois.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
It's a really good day here in my history studios because I received my new blue jeans from Quince. Nice dark blue indigo color, stretch fit, stretches the right places. It's very comfortable. I can wear them while I'm podcasting. Or let's say I have a business meeting. It's not a problem to wear these jeans with a nice dress shirt. It works. High quality. That's what I like about Quince. I've actually purchased from Quince before, so it's pretty easy. I was very excited when they became a sponsor because it's pretty easy for me to speak about them. I have a black turtleneck long sleeve that I got from them because they advertised on a different podcast. But that's just the thing. When you hear a product that's sponsored on the internet, whether it's Instagram or podcasts or things, you're probably like, how can it, be? Is it too good to be true? And that's the thing. Quince has really got high quality. They make deals with ethical factories, too. The products are not expensive. You get shirts for $34 in some cases. Got to check it out. Refresher every day with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/myhist for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/MYHIST for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/myhist.
Elections officially begin, with Iraq and terrorism lurking in the background.
It's 2002. Tom Daschle, senator, is walking down a South Dakota sidewalk. Maybe it's Aberdeen, maybe it's Sioux Falls, or some smaller prairie town where politics still happened face to face. And that's how he did it. Daschle had built a career on this type of campaigning. He liked moving through crowds, going randomly to towns and cities, not announcing that he was coming to a town, and asking about crops, weather, cattle prices, or high school football. He learned this from his mentor, George McGovern. George McGovern got elected by a group of people that didn't always share his politics. Like McGovern, Daschle found that he was surviving in a small state. So he walks down the sidewalk and hears a deep roar overhead. Above him is Air Force One. The president, George W. Bush, is here in South Dakota. Challenging his own state with Secret Service agents, satellite trucks, national media. It wasn't something that all his advisors were thrilled with, getting too personally tied to midterm elections. It hadn't worked out well for Bill Clinton when he does this in 1994. Historically, midterms punished the party in power in the White House, punished them through the congressional elections. If candidates lost, the president then would look weak for having supported them. But Bush believed 2002 was different. The country was still living in the emotional aftermath of September 11th. American troops were fighting in Afghanistan. The White House was beginning its public argument for confronting Iraq. Bush's approval ratings remained sky high, and his advisor, Karl Rove, believed Republicans could, quote, nationalize the Senate races around security, patriotism, and wartime leadership. And so in this state, an odd contrast. Daschle, the Senate Majority Leader, the most powerful elected Democrat of Washington, campaigning on sidewalks for his friend, Senator Tim Johnson, and an involved President who's personally recruited John Thune, now the majority leader, to challenge Democratic Senator Tim Johnson. Thune looked almost engineered for the moment, tall, articulate, disciplined, tightly aligned with the new post-9/11 Republican Party. Yes, this election is the first real national contest that's going to happen after the tragic 9/11 attacks in the United States. And if you look at that, you have Thune focusing on national issues. Tim Johnson is different, quiet, low-key, deeply tied to Senate appropriation politics. When he goes to South Dakota towns and talks, it's about what he's bringing home. To hear Karl Rove, don't talk about roads, don't talk about farm policy, don't talk water projects. For God's sakes, you cannot, in an election after a terror attack, do this even in these local House races. Security, all that matters, the center of everything. Tim Johnson didn't vote for all the bills the president wanted, and voters need to replace him. That's it. How do you illustrate this? In a TV ad, they used an ad of Johnson that cuts pretty quickly to an image of Saddam Hussein, the Iraqi leader. The message is blunt. America lived in dangerous times, and Johnson couldn't be trusted. The news constantly discussed biological attacks, terror alerts. What was going to happen to our own homeland seemed more sensitive. Things had hardened. A pollster, then little known, named Kellyanne Conway, will predict after this midterm that soccer moms, the women who elected Clinton, nearly elected Gore, became security moms. And Bush just needed to push their buttons to win. Johnson making small appearances. In an election with 300,000 people, voting comes down to about 527 votes. Tim Johnson barely survives. Crucial to his survival is Native American turnout in South Dakota reservations, heavily Democratic. Counties tied to the reservation, Shannon County, whose name has changed, Todd County, others provided Johnson with margins long enough to offset Republican strength elsewhere in the state. But nobody could celebrate South Dakota, not Johnson too much, because Democrats nationally were losing, and losing in a huge way.
I think we're going to do very well this fall. I think we're going to win anywhere from 4 to 7 pickups, and I think we win 2 to 3 House.
Yeah, that comment from the leader of the DNC did not age well in 2002. In the immediate aftermath of the September 11th attacks, American politics looked briefly transformed. Democrats and Republicans stood together on the Capitol steps singing God Bless America. Members hug each other openly. Flags are everywhere. Flag decals are on cars, very common.
I think that the president has indicated that the exigencies of the circumstances at the time prevailing and the requirements, the imperatives that have to be vindicated, he'll address in a common sense and thoughtful way as the commander-in-chief. It's what he's done from the very beginning.
President George Bush, there's really no reason to be against the president during this time of tragedy. His approval rating soared above 80%. The Bush administration moved rapidly to create a new homeland security structure, while airports, federal buildings, and television broadcasts became saturated. The American people's ears became saturated during this time. It's hard to kind of remember it again. And I realize as I'm recording this that anyone who's, if they're like kind of 24, you've never known a time where you didn't have to kind of take off your shoes in the airport. I guess some airports are stopping that. It'd go through that kind of TSA and all of that. And you didn't. There was always a detector of some kind, but it was very limited. Go to the airport, 20 minutes before the flight and get on. I mean, this is what starts that world. And this is the first election. An analyst says that it's a 50-50 country, really don't know where things are going. And then comes January 18th, 2002, a speech in Austin. President Bush's top political advisor said today that Republicans will make this president's handling of the war on terrorism the centerpiece of their strategy to win back the Senate and keep control of the House in this year's midterms. That's right, Democrats had the Senate by 1 vote because of the defection earlier in the year. This is before the 9/11 attack. Earlier in 2001, Jeffords of Vermont had switched from Republican to an independent caucusing with the Democrats, effectively a Democrat. And Daschle became the majority leader of the Senate. Rove says, we can go to the country on this issue of security because they trust the Republican Party to do a better job of protecting and strengthening America's military might, and thereby protecting America. Rove was onto something. I mean, the country felt different. Cable news channels displayed color-coded terror alerts, orange alerts, vague warnings about possible attacks were part of daily life. Then came something else. The heart of the government was under attack, as it would turn out, from a mailbox. Only weeks after the 9/11 attacks, letters started arriving to people in the press, to people in government, laced with anthrax spores, mailed to media organizations and members of Congress. Since we were under attack, known at that time from Al-Qaeda, the terrorist group, many Americans immediately suspected that, of course, this was part of that attack. I mean, it's pretty logical. Investigators did notice patterns, like all of these mailings seem to be happening pretty close to D.C. But there was some randomness about where the mailings were occurring. Mostly, they're arriving at Democratic representatives or members of the media that are considered more left-leaning. Daschle himself is targeted. These anthrax attacks are deadly. They kill 5 people and they infect 17 others. Capitol Hill becomes part of the terror story. Senate office buildings are shut down. Staffers are tested for exposure. Now serving in the Senate becomes a dangerous thing. Senator Daschle, for decades after this, will become involved in biohazard issues, even as a former senator. So while senators are voting on bills, there's people with biohazard equipment roaming their halls at different times. Everyone's afraid of just getting a letter. Now, years later, it's going to be concluded that most likely a man named Bruce Edward Ivins, a scientist at a U.S. defense lab, was simply taking these horrible anthrax spores from his own lab and mailing them out to people he didn't like, which tended to be more left-leaning people. And that didn't come out till 2008, and he had already committed suicide. Americans instead, at this time, had no idea where this was coming from. And you had to assume this is there's an enemy that's already made it pretty clear they want to get us and all of that. It's a strange problem. On one hand, Bush's leadership after 9/11 made him extraordinarily popular. Republicans believe national security helped them politically. Roche certainly did. On the other hand, you have a choice to make if you're Bush, because he has to know that this popularity, when you're up to 70 or 80%, that's so rare for an American president nowadays, we just don't even know it. It's not really for you. It's coming because Americans are feeling we've been attacked and we need unity, and you're the guy in the seat. And he had to know that as well. It's a risk.
Al-Qaeda hides, Saddam doesn't. But the danger is that they work in concert. The danger is that Al-Qaeda becomes an extension of Saddam's madness and his hatred and his capacity to extend weapons of mass destruction around the world. Both of them need to be dealt with. The war on terror, you can't distinguish between Al-Qaeda and Saddam when you talk about the war on terror.
But by 2002 already, 6 months from the attacks, say the mood's changing and the administration's push towards war with Iraq, which there had already been immediately after 9/11 a conflict in Afghanistan. Some part covert operations, another part some group boots on the ground, and now we're talking about an Iraq attack. That's going to dominate this election.
The president is quoted in the Washington Post this morning as saying that the Democratic-controlled Senate is not interested in the security of the American people. Not interested in the security of the American people. You tell Senator Inouye he's not interested in the security of the American people.
Daschle, as Senate Majority Leader, is the highest-ranking Democrat, the highest-ranking opposition official in Washington. He's balancing support for anti-terror efforts with resistance to being a rubber stamp to the president.
Could AI help you do more of what you love? Workday is the AI platform for HR and finance that actually knows your business. We help you handle the have-to-dos so you can focus on the can't-wait-to-dos. It's a new Workday.
Best gift ever!
A Lego set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks.
Woo! Next level!
And clicks. For kids who love gaming, choose a Lego set. The gift that always clicks.
Bush and other leaders are targeting the Senate, saying the Senate is what's blocking the security of the American people. Daschle can't believe it. He says this is outrageous.
You tell those who fought in Vietnam and in World War II they're not interested in the security of the American people. That is outrageous. Outrageous.
Now, Bush refrains from direct attacks, but it's attack by implication. And it's, really in 2002, it's just as strong as he turned around and said, you're not patriotic. And there are, of course, individual people supporting the Bush administration making these accusations. So it gets pretty rough. If you go to the Georgia Senate race, this is the clearest symbol of the new politics. You've got a guy, Max Cleland. I mean, you can't argue with his commitment to the country. He's missing 3 limbs. He's in a wheelchair. And he's senator from Georgia.
As America faces terrorists and extremist dictators, Max Cleland runs television ads claiming he has the courage to lead. He says he supports President Bush at every opportunity, but that's not the truth.
Because of his service in Vietnam. He's a decorated veteran. Under old political norms, Cleland's military record should have been automatic insulation from attacks of any kind of weakness on the security issue.
Since July, Max Cleland has voted against the president's vital homeland security efforts 11 times.
His opponent, Republican Saxby Chambliss, doesn't see it that way, attacks him over his votes on homeland security, and again, ads visually provide a link to Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein.
Max Cleland says he has the courage to lead, but the record proves Max Cleland is just misleading.
Democrats think these ads are shocking and indecent. Republicans say, no, these are legitimate questions. We are asking your party to step up. You control the Senate, and we're asking you to step up in wartime. So a lot of people think this is not going to be a normal election, but you have this midterm trend, and every time there's a new president, that election in that second year usually goes against their party. But people looking at this are saying, but it's a weird atmosphere out there. This is just not a normal time. They expect Democrats hold the Senate, possibly gain ground in the Senate, and definitely in the House. It's probably going to be tiny shifts, but the trend should hold. But this was not a normal election, and the terrorism overshadowed everything. Americans were anxious, uncertain. You got something else. Bush decides during the fall that he will campaign, and he makes many flights on Air Force One campaigning for in at least 10 different races and campaigning for his party in those midterm elections, using his personal popularity to help Republican candidates. But there's something else that he does. He continuously asks the Senate to have a vote on whether to go into Iraq. He has those who are speaking for the administration and news media question Daschle, when's he going to have a vote in Iraq? He goes to the United Nations. He appears with Prime Minister of Italy, Berlusconi, Camp David. The president's blunt. The United States is prepared to act alone. Enough is enough, Bush declares. Meanwhile, Democrats are saying the information linking this Saddam Hussein in Iraq to anything to do with Al-Qaeda or 9/11 is sketchy at best. If anything, it's limited. It's through third, fourth, fifth parties. You know, Saddam Hussein's a bad guy, but this isn't what he did. And furthermore, he doesn't even like the people that carried this out. Vice President Dick Cheney warns that Saddam Hussein could not be allowed to continue defying the world. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld pushes military preparations forward. Speechwriters and strategists carefully shape the argument. Bush talks resolve. He said, "We have a choice between a world of fear and a world of progress." This phrasing reflects the administration's growing confidence that Americans would support force if diplomacy stalls. The UN won't budge. The UN doesn't agree that Saddam Hussein needs to be taken care of militarily. But there's enough bad actions that Saddam Hussein has taken vis-a-vis the inspectors that you can make a case. And so even some Democrats are starting to come along and say, well, you know, we do support the use of force. And
because I think today, John, I think some Americans are very confused where we are with Iraq. As you know, just last week, the President and Secretary Rumsfeld came out in the front lawn of Crawford and said we need to slow down. The media was moving too fast towards Iraq.
Frenzy, they called it.
Frenzy. And then literally within 3 days, Vice President Cheney gives a speech and says we need to go immediately. So I think people are very perplexed at where we are.
House Democrats, Gephardt is, you know, who's leading the Democrats in the House at this time, are leading towards, yeah, we're probably going to support this bill if it comes up. Daschle is forced into a vote. And so you start seeing his position change from an uncertain time, and really we should have the vote after the election, to, okay, we'll have a vote on Iraq before the election. The vote happens October 10th, 2002. It passes just after midnight. 77 senators vote for it, 23 senators, all Democrats except for Lincoln Chafee, a Republican of Rhode Island, mostly Democrats like Ted Kennedy and Bernie Sanders, people from fairly safe Democratic districts, vote against it. But it puts an issue that's favorable to the administration right in front of the electorate at the time of the election. Now, there's something else to talk about, which is just an odd thing that just happens to happen in 2002, and it's tragic, is that you have two senators on the ballot, Democrats, Paul Wellstone in Minnesota, Mel Carnahan in Missouri. He used to be the governor there. Who are popular and probably going to win their seats. Wellstone's an opponent of the Iraq War. Carnahan's a more moderate. There are plane crashes that kill both of them. And so instead of Wellstone, Democrats in Minnesota end up running Walter Mondale, the former vice president, who was a senator in Minnesota, but it's been a while now. In 2002, he hadn't been a senator since the 70s. In Missouri, they run Gene Carnahan. What had happened is Mel Carnahan died in a plane crash in 2000, and his wife replaced him on the ballot, wins the election, but they aren't able to change the printing on the ballot, so the ballots still say Mel Carnahan. She beats him. She beats her opponent in that election, but there's a special election in 2002 to fill the seat, and you know, they say, well, look, we're going to place Gene Carnahan in there if we win. And there's a special election. Mel Carnahan, deceased, wins that election. Too late to change the printing of the ballot. But in 2002, you have to have a special for the real term. And Gene Carnahan doesn't win that election. So a complicated thing with the deaths of two members who are, that'll end up changing these races because the Republican margin is 2 seats since they lost Jeffords in Vermont. And that's exactly what they get here in this election. When the election returns come in, everybody's shocked because the president's party normally loses seat, but instead President Bush and Republicans have gained 8 seats in the House and technically 2 in the Senate, because again, they really gained 3, but they had lost Jeffords, which had been a Republican seat. Incumbent Democrats that lose include Karen Thurman in Florida, Bill Luther in Minnesota, a complete surprise. His suburban Minneapolis district seemed like it was solid Democrat, but Republicans had slowly been doing better there. I mean, Bush had been targeting Minnesota in 2000, wanted to win it then. He's going to target it again in 2004. Walter Mondale does not win. You know, there are Democratic figures that you see, Rahm Emanuel, Chris Van Hollen in Maryland, that are going to be future national stars. For Republicans, Marsha Blackburn, Devin Nunes, and Tom Cole are elected during this 2002 election. Republicans go from 221 seats to 229 seats. Democrats fell from 212 to 205. Republicans win about 50% of the vote of people casting votes in House elections. We have the commentary of a President Obama on this election. At this point, he's not President Obama, though. He's just State Senator Obama from Illinois.
Senator Obama, the old chestnut is that all elections come down to local issues. How much of it do you think had to do with local issues particular to a state, and the chips just fell that way, which happened to benefit the president? How much of it had to do with this being a referendum on the president?
Well, my impression was that the president and the White House did an excellent job nationalizing the campaign, and I think you've got to give them credit politically for having done that very effectively. One of the disadvantages for Democrats is that they don't have a singular leader that can be their spokesperson and lead the charge.
The 2002 election stands in stark contrast. I have to go back to 1934 when FDR's first term to find a first term midterm where a president's party gained seats. Now, Clinton had gained seats for his party, about 5 seats, in the 1998 midterm. Really a nothing burger because Republicans held the House anyway. Here, Republicans were expected to lose seats and they end up gaining seats. They still held the House, but they gained back the Senate, which gives extra oomph to Bush's campaign. It gives a boost to Rove, who now is seen as the one with the right strategy, so he gets control over everything, which is only useful if you're going to look at what happens next to know that you're going to have a unified campaign under Rove and Ken Millman going into that 2004 election, which was tight, ultimately successful. These 2002 midterms lay the base for Bush's victory in 2004, despite the fact that people may not have been fully sold on him, as we see kind of later in the poll ratings that Bush is going to get in his second term, where he almost turns to people and say, hey, what happened to my popularity? Didn't you like my ideas? No, we really didn't like most of those things you were proposing. But, we'll take a tax cut, give us some money back. But most of your larger policies, this was mostly a temporary national security election. Now, that's one way to look at it, and you can. The mystery of 2002 and applying it to anything else is that it hasn't happened again. So it happened once in the 20th century, that I'm aware of. I'm trying to use my mental map here, but since the number of House seats has been frozen, I believe it's 1911. That's really 1934, where a president's party gains seats. It's crazy. In a first term midterm, like the second year of their presidency. Crazy for that to happen. But that was FDR during the Depression. In this new century, right, in the 21st century, this is the only election where it happened. Now, 20 years later, Biden gets what we call a stave election, where you're losing seats, but not as many as expected. So 2002 has to stand there for anyone that's just making a simple prediction. The president party always loses seats in a midterm. Well, you got to look at 1998. That's the second year midterm, but still look at it. 1934, 2002, and some of those stave elections where the loss is small, and say, well, it doesn't always happen that way. But the real mystery is how much of it is 9/11 baked in. The tragedy that had occurred, the security situation that had occurred, the desire that normal people, logical people might have to just support what's going on right now. And then later we can argue, right? And how much of it was steps. An American president forced an issue, put it onto his opponents, created a kind of incumbency for his opponents by focusing on the fact that Daschle was the Senate leader and could stop votes. He also actively campaigned, and he campaigned as a popular figure, versus when Clinton was going out there, and to a limited degree when Obama was going out there in 2010, these presidents didn't have the approval rating that Bush did in 2002. They're all great questions. And it's one of those that I think you got to, you could go either way on that. And I just think it's an important election to look at. Websites, www.myhistorycanbeatupyourpolitics.com. Someone told me the other day, you don't have to use the www. I think you still should enter it, but okay. Hey, I go way back. This is 20 years of doing this podcast. So www.myhistorycanbeatupyourpolitics.com.
Meet the new iSIMS, the single talent acquisition platform that's fully future-ready. It works wherever and however you hire, with insights no one else offers. One solution that fits seamlessly into your existing tech stack, which is why IT and HR leaders trust it. With the best of enterprise-grade software and AI, iSIMS helps you identify and secure the right talent faster. iSIMS, powering exceptional hiring. Learn more at isims.com.